The first time I heard my own voice played in a courtroom, I almost stood up and walked out. Not because I was ashamed of what I had said, because I knew exactly what came next. 11 years earlier, my family had called me a traitor for saying those same words. My father stopped speaking to me. My older brother told everyone I had tried to steal from our own family. My mother cried in front of relatives and said she didn't know how the daughter she raised could become so cold. Even my grandmother, who had once told me that loyalty was more valuable than money, looked me in the eye and said, "You chose strangers over your own blood." For years, I carried that sentence like a stone. Then, on a gray Tuesday morning, I sat in a county courtroom while my brother's attorney connected an old recorder to a speaker. There was a soft click, a little static. Then my father's voice filled the room. "I know what she found," he said. My breath stopped. The judge leaned forward. My brother's face turned white. And my mother, sitting behind him, suddenly covered her mouth. The recording continued. "She thinks the money is the problem. It isn't. The money is only what they're willing to show her." That was the moment everyone in that courtroom finally understood something I had spent 11 years trying to explain. I had never betrayed my family. I had been the one person in my family who refused to help them betray each other. My name is Claire Bennett, and this is the story of how I lost my family over an inheritance. Lost 11 years of my life to their lies, and finally watched the truth come back to them in the only place where they could no longer rewrite it. I grew up in a small town in Ohio where most families knew each other by first name, and every road seemed to lead back to Main Street. My father, Daniel Bennett, owned Bennett Hardware, a modest family business my grandfather had opened in 1972. It wasn't glamorous. There were no expensive cars parked outside, no giant warehouse, no corporate offices, just a brick storefront, a dusty back room, a tiny office with an old metal desk, and shelves full of everything from paint rollers to lawn tools. But my father was proud of it. He used to say, "A business doesn't have to be big to matter. It just has to serve people well." My mother, Linda, handled the bookkeeping. My older brother, Ryan, worked at the store from the time he was 17. I was the youngest. And for most of my childhood, I believed our family was unbreakable. Ryan was 5 years older than me, and when we were kids, I thought he was the coolest person in the world. He taught me to ride a bike. He showed me how to throw a baseball. He used to sneak into the kitchen with me after dinner and steal pieces of apple pie before Mom could notice. When I left for college, he hugged me at the bus station and said, "Don't forget where you came from." I laughed. I couldn't if I tried. I didn't know how important those words would become. After college, I moved back home and started working in the store. My father was getting older, and my mother had started talking about retirement. Ryan seemed to be the obvious person who would take over the business someday. I never questioned it. He was the oldest. He had more experience. Dad trusted him. I was happy to let him lead. I liked organizing the books, handling vendor invoices, and keeping track of the little details everyone else ignored. That was how I discovered the first problem. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October. I was sitting in the office, reconciling the monthly accounts, when I noticed a payment that didn't make sense. It was a transfer from the business account to a company called Northfield Consulting, $6,000. The description said, "Advisory Services." I checked the previous month. There was another payment, $8,000, then another, $9,500. I knew our business well enough to understand that we had never used a consulting company called Northfield. I asked my mother about it. She barely looked up from her calculator. "Ryan handles some outside services." "What services?" She smiled tightly. "I don't know, Claire. Your brother manages that side." Something about her answer bothered me. Not because it was unusual for Ryan to approve expenses, because she looked nervous. That evening, I asked Ryan about it. He was standing in the stock room, counting boxes. "What's Northfield Consulting?" He stopped, just for a second. Then he laughed. "Why?" I saw the payments. He went back to counting. "It's a business consultant. What are they doing for us?" "Why are you suddenly auditing me?" "I'm not auditing you." "You sound like it." His voice had changed. I stared at him. "I'm asking a question." He sighed and rubbed his forehead. "It's complicated." "What does that mean?" "It means Dad knows about it." That ended the conversation. Because if Dad knew, I assumed it was legitimate. I told myself I was being suspicious for no reason. A few weeks later, Dad called me into his office. He closed the door. That alone made me nervous. He usually hated closed doors. "Sit down," he said. I sat. He looked tired, older than I had seen him before. "Claire, I need to ask you something." "Okay." "Do you trust your brother?" The question made my stomach drop. "Of course." He looked away. That wasn't the answer I expected. "Dad, what's going on?" He rubbed his hands together. "Nothing you need to worry about yet." "Yet?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stood up and went to an old filing cabinet. He unlocked the bottom drawer. Inside was a thick folder. He pulled it out but didn't open it. "Someday," he said quietly, "you may have to make a choice." "Between what?" "Family and the truth." I laughed nervously. "That sounds dramatic." He didn't laugh. "I mean it." Before I could ask anything else, he put the folder back. Forget I said anything. I wish I had ignored him, but I couldn't. The next few months became strange. Ryan started acting differently around me. He would stop conversations when I entered a room. He began changing passwords on financial accounts that I had previously been allowed to access. Invoices disappeared. Questions turned into arguments. And then there was the house. My grandparents had left behind a large farmhouse just outside town. Dad had inherited it. Everyone knew it was valuable. The property had been in the family for generations. And over the years, the land around it had become worth far more than anyone expected. Developers were buying property nearby. A highway expansion had been approved. People in town had been whispering for years that the old Bennett farm could eventually be worth several $1,000,000. My father never cared about the number. He cared about keeping the property. He used to say, "This place carries our name." But Ryan had a different opinion. One night, during dinner, he said, "We should sell the farm." Dad put down his fork. "No. We could retire comfortably." "No. Dad, it's just land." "It's not just land." Ryan laughed. "Everything is sacred to you." Mom looked between them. "Can we not fight tonight?" Ryan leaned back. "I'm just thinking about the future." Dad's voice became hard. I said no. Ryan looked at me. "What do you think, Claire?" I shrugged. "It's Dad's property." Ryan smiled. "Exactly." Something about that smile stayed with me. 3 months later, my grandmother Eleanor suffered a serious fall. She was 91. She had lived independently for years, but after the fall, she needed more help. She moved into an assisted living residence about 20 miles away. I visited her every Sunday. Ryan almost never did. One afternoon, Grandma asked me to sit beside her. She took my hand. "Your father is worried." "About what?" She looked toward the window. "Your brother." I didn't know what to say. She squeezed my fingers. "Families can become strange when money is involved." I smiled sadly. "You sound like Dad." "No," she said. "Your father still believes people can be better than they are." She paused. "I don't." I looked at her. "What happened?" She leaned closer. "Your brother has been asking questions." "What questions?" "About the farm." My heart sank. "He wants to sell it." "I know." Grandma's eyes filled with sadness. "Claire, promise me something." "What?" "Never sign anything you don't understand." I promised. She nodded. Then she whispered something I didn't understand. "Your father was right to hide the blue box." "What blue box?" She smiled. I said too much. She changed the subject. I never asked again. A month later, my father collapsed in the store. It wasn't a dramatic event. There was no ambulance race through town. No sudden diagnosis. He simply sat down in his chair and said he felt weak. At the hospital, the doctor told us he needed rest. My father looked at me from the bed. "Don't let them rush you." "Who?" "Ryan." I felt cold. "What is he going to do?" Dad closed his eyes. "Everything he thinks I won't have time to stop." I spent that night beside him. At 3 in the morning, he woke up. "Claire." "I'm here." He looked directly at me. "If anything happens, there's a lawyer in Columbus named Martin Hale." I grabbed my phone. "What's his number?" "I'll give it to you tomorrow." "Dad, just tell me now." He shook his head. "Tomorrow." He never got the chance. He died 6 days later. A heart problem. Quietly. In his sleep, I remember standing beside his hospital bed after everyone else had left. I remember touching his hand. It was cold. I remember thinking, he's gone, but everything else will still be here. I was wrong. Everything changed. At the funeral, Ryan stood beside Mom and thanked everyone for coming. Then, in the parking lot, he hugged me. For 1 second, he was my brother again. Then he whispered into my ear, "Don't make this harder than it has to be." I pulled back. What does that mean? It means Dad's gone. I know. And now we have to be practical. I stared at him. Practical about what? The estate. 3 days after the funeral, I discovered that Ryan had already scheduled a meeting with an attorney. I hadn't been invited. When I asked him why, he said, "You don't need to be involved in every decision." That sentence hurt more than I expected. Dad told me I needed to be involved. Ryan's expression changed. "He told you that?" "Yes." "What exactly did he say?" I hesitated. "He said there was something I needed to understand." Ryan stared at me for a long moment. Then he said, "You're imagining things." "I'm not. You always think you're the smartest person in the room." "I didn't say that." "You don't have to." He walked away. A week later, a lawyer arrived at our house with documents. His name was Richard Sloan. He represented the estate. He explained that my father had left the farmhouse and a controlling share of the hardware store to Ryan. The rest of the assets were divided among me, Ryan, and Mom. I wasn't happy, but I wasn't shocked. What shocked me was one sentence. "The farm is currently under contract." I looked at Ryan. "What?" He didn't blink. "I told you we needed to sell." "You already signed a contract?" "It's not finalized." "You did this before Dad died?" "No." Richard cleared his throat. "The negotiations began before Mr. Bennett's death." My mother stared at the table. I felt sick. "Mom?" She didn't look at me. "Your father knew." "Did he?" Ryan interrupted. "This is ridiculous." "No," I said. "What's ridiculous is that everyone knew except me." Richard placed a document in front of me. "Miss Bennett, there's another issue." "What?" "The estate accounts show substantial payments to Northfield Consulting." My heart stopped. I looked at Ryan, then at Mom. Neither spoke. Richard continued. "Approximately $480,000 over 18 months. I stared at the number. "That much?" "Yes." "What did they do?" Ryan said sharply. "They provided legitimate services." "What services?" His jaw tightened. "Business restructuring." I looked at Richard. "Can I see the contracts?" He hesitated. Ryan answered, "They're confidential." I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because suddenly I understood that everyone had been having conversations about my family's money without me. "What is Northfield?" Ryan stood up. "I'm done with this." "You're not going anywhere." He looked at me. "You're unbelievable." "Why?" "Because Dad is barely buried and you're already attacking me." "I'm asking where nearly $500,000 went." "You sound just like him." The room went silent. "My father." For the first time, Ryan looked afraid. I filed a formal request to review the estate records. That was the moment my family decided I had betrayed them. Not when I accused anyone. Not when I made a public claim. Simply because I asked questions. My mother called me that night. "You're hurting your brother." "I'm trying to understand the finances." "You need to let it go." "Mom, $480,000 is missing." "It isn't missing." "Then where is it?" She began crying. "I don't want to be caught in the middle." "You're already in the middle," she whispered. "Your father wouldn't want this." I nearly shouted. "My father told me to be careful." She hung up. 2 days later, I received a letter from Ryan's attorney. It accused me of interfering with the sale of the farm. It warned me not to make false allegations. I was stunned. I had said almost nothing. Then I discovered why. Someone had told the attorney that I was trying to block the sale because I wanted a larger inheritance. I knew immediately who it had been. Ryan. The rumors spread fast. At church, at the grocery store, at the hardware store, people started saying Claire was trying to take her brother's money. One old family friend told me, "You should be ashamed." I asked, "What exactly did I do?" She looked away. "I don't know." That was the worst part. Nobody knew. They had simply believed the story. My own mother stopped answering my calls. Ryan told relatives I had become obsessed with the estate. He said I had always been jealous of him. He said Dad had promised him the business. He said I was trying to destroy the family. Then, one afternoon, my mother came to my apartment. She looked exhausted. She sat on the couch and started crying. I need you to stop. Stop what? This. I'm not doing anything. You hired someone to investigate the accounts. That's exactly what I mean. I leaned forward. Mom, look at me. She did. Did Dad approve Northfield? She didn't answer. Did he? Tears rolled down her face. He said he was worried. About Ryan? She covered her face. I can't. What did Ryan do? She stood. I came here to ask you to protect this family. I am. No. She shook her head. You're protecting yourself. I realized then that she had already chosen. Not because she believed Ryan was right, because she was afraid of what would happen if the truth came out. The next day, I met with a forensic accountant. Her name was Melissa Grant. She was calm, methodical, and impossible to intimidate. After reviewing the records, she told me something I will never forget. Claire, the money didn't just leave the business. What do you mean? It was moved through 3 separate accounts. Whose accounts? She turned the page toward me. One belongs to Northfield Consulting. Who owns it? She hesitated. Are you sure you want me to keep going? Yes. Northfield is registered to a man named Eric Vale. I didn't know the name. Melissa pointed to another document. But there's more. The second account belonged to a company called Ridgeway Property Group. The third was a personal account. Ryan's. My hands went numb. Why would he do that? I don't know. Can we prove it? Yes. Melissa looked at me. But that doesn't mean you should. Why? Because once you accuse family, you can't take it back. I thought about my father. Then I said, I'm not accusing anyone. I'm following the money. That decision changed everything. We discovered that Northfield had almost no operating expenses, no employees, no offices, no meaningful business activity. It looked like a shell company. Money went in, money came out, and much of it ended up connected to property purchases. Then we found the most disturbing document of all, a draft agreement to sell the family farm. The buyer was Ridgeway Property Group, the same company connected to the second account. I stared at the paper. Who owns Ridgeway? Melissa looked at me. Eric Vale, the same man who owned Northfield. I felt a strange calm. Not anger, not fear, just certainty. Ryan had created a chain that moved our family's money through companies he said were unrelated. But we still had one problem. We needed proof that my father didn't knowingly approve it. Because if Dad had approved the arrangement, everything could be explained away as a private estate strategy. That was when I remembered the old metal filing cabinet, the one from Dad's office, and the folder he refused to show me. I went back to the store. Ryan was there. When he saw me, he blocked the office door. You can't be here. This is a family business. Not anymore. What did you do with Dad's records? He laughed. You really need to move on. I'm not moving on. Why? Because I know about Northfield. For the first time, he stopped pretending. His face became still. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know where the money went. He stepped closer. You need to be careful. Is that a threat? No. He smiled. It's advice. I stared at him. Dad was right about you. His smile disappeared. You don't know what Dad thought. I know what he told me. Ryan's voice dropped. He told me something too. What? He said you were too emotional to handle the business. I didn't believe him, but the words hurt anyway. I left. That evening, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a small brass key and a note. Locker 114. County storage. I knew the handwriting. Dad's. My heart started pounding. The next morning, I drove to the storage facility. Locker 114 was old and almost empty. Inside was a cardboard box. The box contained tax records, handwritten notes, an old pocket calculator, and a small blue metal container. The blue box, the one Grandma had mentioned. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a flash drive, a photograph, and a handwritten note from my father. Claire, if you are reading this, trust records, not people, especially me. I sat on the concrete floor. I read the note twice. Then I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. There were dozens of files, bank statements, scanned contracts, emails, and one audio file. The date was 11 years earlier. The file was nearly 40 minutes long. I pressed play. At first, all I heard was room noise, then my father's voice. "Ryan, this is the last time I'm asking." My brother answered. "I told you I can fix it." "You're not fixing it. I'm protecting the business. You're moving money. It's temporary. You moved it without permission. I was going to put it back. You already said that." There was a pause. Then Ryan said something that made my blood run cold. "If you tell Claire, she'll destroy everything." My father answered quietly. "That is not Claire's fault. She'll choose a side. She'll choose the truth." Then Ryan laughed. "That's exactly why she's dangerous." The recording ended. I sat there staring at the screen. The recording was 11 years old. The date was before Northfield existed. That meant something even bigger had been happening all those years ago. I listened again. Then again. There were mentions of another company, a property loan, a debt, and a signature that had apparently been forged. My father had discovered it. He had confronted Ryan, and then, according to the recording, Ryan begged him for one chance to fix it. Dad gave him that chance. He had kept the matter inside the family. He believed his son could change. That was the tragedy. Dad had spent years trying to save Ryan from the consequences of his own decisions, and in doing so, he had hidden the truth from everyone, including me. I sent the recording to Melissa. She listened in silence. When she finished, she said, "Claire, this changes the case." "How?" "It proves intent. Can it be used? That depends." "On what?" "Authentication. The original file had metadata. The storage device had a creation date, but a good attorney could still challenge it. We needed something stronger." I contacted the attorney Dad had mentioned before he died. Martin Hale. He was older than I expected. Gray hair. Quiet manner. He sat across from me and listened to the entire story. When I finished, he asked one question. "Did your father ever tell you why he kept this from you?" "No." Martin stared at the table. Then he said, "Because he was trying to protect his children." "Which one?" "Hisaihu." "Both." He reached into his briefcase and removed a file. "I never understood why he called me that night." "What night?" 11 years ago. My skin prickled. "What happened?" "Your father came to my office after closing." "Why?" "He asked me what would happen if a family member had secretly transferred company funds." "What did you tell him?" "That it could become a serious legal problem." Martin opened the file. "He asked me to prepare a contingency plan." "For what?" "The possibility that he would need to remove Ryan from the company." I stared at him. "Did he?" "No." "Why not?" Martin looked at me. He believed Ryan could change. I closed my eyes. The same answer again. My father had trusted redemption more than evidence. Martin handed me another document. This was never filed. It was a draft agreement transferring control of the business from Ryan to me. My breath caught. Why would Dad do this? Because he believed you were the one person who would protect the business without using it to control the family. I looked at the document. It had never been signed, but it had been prepared. That meant Dad had been thinking about it for years. Now I understood why Ryan feared me. He didn't fear my greed. He feared that Dad might have trusted me more. The court case began over the farm sale. What started as a civil dispute became much larger when the financial records were examined. Ryan claimed I had interfered out of spite. My attorney presented the accounting trail. Northfield, Ridgeway, the transfers, the contracts, the shell accounts. Ryan's attorney argued that all transactions had legitimate explanations. Then Martin Hale entered the courtroom. He testified about my father's private meeting with him 11 years earlier. Ryan looked furious. When Martin mentioned the draft transfer document, my mother began crying. Ryan's attorney objected. The judge allowed the document to remain. Then came the issue of the recording. The judge asked whether we could establish its authenticity. Martin presented the original storage device, the note from my father, and the file metadata. The other side challenged everything. They argued the recording might have been altered. We had experts review it. They found no evidence of editing. The voice analysis was consistent with my father's known recordings. The room grew tense. Still, I expected Ryan to fight. He always did. But when the judge ruled that the recording could be played, Ryan stopped fighting. He just sat there. That was the morning I mentioned at the beginning. The morning when everyone heard the truth. The recording began. My father's voice filled the courtroom. I know what she found. Ryan's voice followed. She doesn't know everything. She knows enough. She'll go to the police. She'll go to the truth. A pause. Then Ryan said, "You keep protecting her." Dad answered, "Because she deserves better than this." Ryan laughed. "She's always been your favorite." Dad's voice became quiet. "This is not about favorites. It always is." "No, Ryan. This is about choices." Then the line that changed everything. "I won't let you turn Claire into the villain because she refuses to lie for you." The courtroom went completely silent. Ryan stared at the floor. My mother was crying openly. The judge listened. The recording continued. Dad said, "You can still fix this." Ryan answered, "And if I can't?" "Then you accept the consequences." There was a long silence. Then Ryan said something I had never expected. "You think Claire will forgive you when she knows?" Dad replied, "She may not." "Then why tell her?" "Because one day she deserves the whole truth." That was it. Not a confession to everything. Not a dramatic speech. Just the truth. My father knew. Ryan knew. And for years, they had kept me out of it. The courtroom recording ended. Nobody moved. Then the judge asked Ryan's attorney if he wished to respond. The attorney stood. He looked at Ryan, then at the judge. Then he said, "Your Honor, we need a brief recess." Ryan whispered something to him. The attorney shook his head. "Not now." The judge called a recess. Ryan stood and walked toward me. For the first time in 11 years, there was no anger in his face. Only exhaustion. He stopped a few feet away. "You always wanted to know why." I said nothing. He looked down. I was drowning. I waited. "When Grandpa died, Dad put everything on me. The store, the loans, the property. I thought I could handle it. You stole from the business. I borrowed, without permission. I thought I could fix it. You kept taking more." "Yes. And then you built companies to hide it." He closed his eyes. "Yes." My voice shook. "Why?" He looked at me. "Because every time I thought I was one step away from fixing everything, I made another mistake. That doesn't explain why you blamed me." His face crumpled. "Because Dad trusted you." I stared at him. "What?" "He trusted you to do the right thing even when it hurt. And you hated that?" "I was afraid of it." "Why?" "Because I knew you would tell the truth." I almost laughed. After 11 years, the answer was that simple. "You made me the villain because you needed one." He nodded. "Yes. Do you know what that cost me?" "I know." "No, you don't." He looked at me. "I lost Mom." "I know." "I lost my grandparents last years because half the family wouldn't speak to me." "I know." "I spent years wondering whether Dad had really seen me as selfish." Ryan's eyes filled with tears. He didn't. I turned away. "Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because by the time I wanted to, I had told so many lies that the truth would have destroyed me." There it was. The sentence I had needed for 11 years. Not an excuse. Not forgiveness. Just an explanation. My mother approached us. She looked smaller than I remembered. She touched my arm. "Claire." I turned. "I'm sorry." I didn't speak. "I knew things were wrong," she said. "Not everything, but enough." "Why did you stay quiet?" She began to cry. "Because I was afraid of losing both of you." "You lost me anyway." "I know." She looked at Ryan. "I thought if I kept the peace, eventually everything would settle." I shook my head. "Silence doesn't create peace." She nodded. "I know." The hearing resumed. The judge reviewed the evidence. The proposed sale of the farm was halted. The financial transfers were referred for further legal review. Ryan was removed from control of the business pending the outcome. The estate was frozen until the accounting was complete. Months passed. The truth did not repair everything overnight. That is not how real life works. My mother and I started speaking again. Slowly, awkwardly. She came to my apartment one Sunday with a pie she had baked herself. We sat at the kitchen table. She said, "Your father would hate how long it took us to find our way back." I smiled faintly. He would. Ryan and I didn't speak for a long time. Eventually, he sent me a letter. Not a legal letter. Not a defense. A real letter. He admitted what he had done. He wrote that fear had turned into greed, and greed had turned into pride, and pride had made him believe he was entitled to decide what everyone else deserved to know. He apologized. I didn't forgive him immediately. Forgiveness is not a switch. It's not something you owe someone just because they finally told the truth. But I read the letter more than once, because for the first time, there were no excuses in it, only accountability. The court process eventually resulted in the recovery of a significant portion of the money. The farm was not sold. The hardware store remained open, and I was asked to help rebuild the business. At first, I said no. Then I remembered Dad's words. A business doesn't have to be big to matter. It just has to serve people well. So I agreed. I changed the company structure, added independent financial oversight,